First, I'd like to thank the Skeptic Feminist for hosting, Carl for joining, and also the audience for taking the time out of your day to watch this. Is feminism good for the world? Before I start, I think it's important to first ask the question, why do we need feminism? And to answer that, I'd like to paraphrase a YouTuber who summed it up better than I think I've ever heard it done. And that was by Captain Andy, who's referenced number 1 below. And that is that when we compare the lives of men and women, they are so different that that difference is worth talking about.
Captain Andy? You mean safe spaces, Andy? You mean control the narrative, Andy? You mean don't know shit about science, Andy? You mean I believe in myths, Andy?
This is flawed partly because despite the great strides that have been made toward gender equality, there are still ways in which men and women are not equal in society, notably the wage gap and women's reproductive rights. See the recent Hobby Lobby decision.
Kristi, I thought you were educated, but I guess that was a premature assumption. You're actually an educated idiot, to be more precise. Instead of coming out of the gate with a quote from a reputable scientist, a statistician, a person of credible intellect and reputation, or even a published sociologist, for fuck's sake, you quote Safe Spaces Andy. Congratulations. Well, it's fairly obvious here already at the 30-second mark, no less, that you got an affirmative action doctorate. It's funny, absolutely hilarious that you make the very same logical error that Safe Spaces Andy does. As you say, he said, when you compare the lives of men and women, they are so different that the difference is worth talking about. Yeah, absolutely, lives are absolutely worth talking about, but that statement is more or less gender neutral or egalitarian. But that's not what feminism is about, is it there, shaman? I mean, Shaw-Fem, Winterflake. Feminism operates under the assumption that the differences between men and women mean that women have been, and continue to be, systematically mistreated more than men in all aspects of life, which is batshit fucking crazy. You've got two things going on here. You have a non sequitur mishmashed into a false equivalency. Basically, you jump from A to B, then directly to Z. A. Men and women are biologically different and experience life differently. Generally speaking, no one's going to have any problem with that, except a fucking feminist as to biology. B. Because there are differences, only an idiot, not interested in science or knowledge, would begrudge an honest investigation of those differences. Sure. But then you go straight to Z. Feminism with its ideological lens and the theoretical framework is needed, else, apparently, no discussion on gender can be had. But you haven't shown why we can't use the various schools of philosophy. You haven't shown why we can't use psychology. You haven't shown why we can't use biology. You haven't shown where we can't use political frameworks inside which we can discuss the differences between the sexes. Without that, or without showing that we are overall better to include feminism as another framework to do this investigation, you can't get to Z, you dumb bitch. And here's where you're mishmashing things. What you're doing is you're taking Safe Spaces Andy's quote out of context and just sort of mashing together discussion sexual differences, putting that into feminism as if they are one and the same, when they are clearly distinct. Discussing the difference between the sexes is not exclusive to feminism. In other words, Shaman Winterflake, you and your fucking movement are full of commie-style propaganda bullshit, as we shall see more clearly later on.
In Western nations, people encouraged by feminist women and men have been talking about these differences and the discrepancies between and within the sexes for a few centuries now, if we date it back to Mary Astles's 1694 A Serious Proposal to the Ladies, which argued that women should receive an education that includes more than preparing them to be wives to their husbands, but to develop their own intellects and abilities. Reference 2. Proceeding from this view that the difference between men and women's lives are worthy of our consideration, evaluation, and discussion, that brings us on to what to do when we see inequalities, inequities, discrimination, or marginalizations, and that is to do reform.
In Western nations, people are encouraged by feminists and women and men have been talking about these differences and these discrepancies between and within the sexes for a few centuries now, if we date it back to Mary Assel's 1694 serious proposal to the ladies.
Shafem Winterflake, you are a dunderheaded cull if ever I heard one. Do you know how stupid you sound? Men and women have been talking about the differences between the sexes since mankind first learned to talk. There's no revelation here. What the fuck, you just wanted to cite a book? Wow, fucking impressive, everybody. Shafem Winterflake read a book where women talk about men and women and such. Viewers, take note. This is how postmodern academics, which I was once upon a time, shovel bullshit. They lace it with references, so it makes them sound like they're speaking from a place of wisdom and authority. Nowadays, most of the time, it's just bullshit. Moving on.
I use as my definition of feminism today the following: a range of political movements, ideologies, and social movements that share a common goal: to define, establish, and achieve equal political, economic, personal, and social rights for women. That's taken from Wiki, but it's based on reference 3.
Allow me to just paraphrase that for emphasis.
Feminism today is a range of ideologies and social and political movements.
In other words, the Hydra has many heads.
That share a common goal to define, establish, and achieve equal political, economic, personal, and social rights for women.
In other words, the Hydra is a bitch. That's it. And I gotta hand it to you, Shafem Winterflake. The only thing that's really a lie there is plopping in the word equal. Because, I mean, if feminism was about equality, you wouldn't leave men out of your fucking definition now, would you? But again, that's just another commie propaganda technique, twisting shit up to fool people. You see, folks, how she went from the innocuous premise of considering the differences between men and women to justify a movement that promotes women and only women and drops the just and equal treatment of men right out of the picture. This is how postmodern commies spread propaganda bullshit. They talk fast, they make leaps of logic, and they just keep on going, rarely ever conceding points that go against their narrative. They just go from A, then to E, then to Q, then to Z, and leave out all the other steps that would otherwise be necessary to support their claims in a rational, empirical world. They avoid empiricism and logical argument like the plague. They avoid words and definitions that everyone else is counting on, and they make up new definitions and new words and twist them ever so slightly so that the truth falls through the cracks. And all we're left with is their bullshit. Fuck this idea of using the methods of feminism to analyze how beneficial feminism is. Don't believe a goddamn word of it. Start from the beginning and work your way up. The only way to figure out if feminism has been a net positive for the world is to do so empirically, and when empirical evidence doesn't answer the question, then you move to logical argument. That's the only way that you could possibly come close to answering this question. Okay, I'm going to end it here for now. This is going to take a lot of time to go through this whole debate and illustrate what utter bullshit Shafem Winterflake tried to pass off as wisdom due to the sheer volume of said bullshit. So stay tuned. Also, I want to thank Robin from the open house for helping set up my avatar to lip sync and let me wobble my head a bit. Thanks a million, Robin. I'll put Robin's channel and Twitter and Reddit, all of that shit in the description. Now, Robin's a non-libertarian and a lefty, but for all of that, a stand-up guy, willing to have an honest and civil debate with you. So definitely subscribe to the open house. He's right now doing his commie shit on Fridays for about 8 hours. And if there's room in the stream, you can usually get on with him and shoot the shit. Also, I wanted to announce, if you haven't heard it, I now have a streaming channel. It's Tom Sequitur Streams. I wanted to do it on Tuesdays, but I've had to move it to Wednesdays. I'll put a link in the description for the next live stream. If you go there, you'll see the topic, you'll see who the guests are, and if you look at the screen right about here, it will tell you what time the show comes on in your time zone. So be sure to take note of that. And if you ever want to be a guest in one of my live streams, all you got to do is get yourself a Skype account. You don't have to get the application. You can just use your browser, go to Skype, download the app, or you can do Skype from the web. Look for me on Skype, tom.sequitur. Again, tom.sequitur. And then let me know you want on, and I'll put you in the what I call the green room, and we'll decide there who's going to be the guests. All right, everybody. Until next time, take care. Unless you're a feminist, then I highly recommend being careless.